So let's move to the third part of this meeting. That is when we will join three architects that are in some different way related to this revision that the Heritage Plan of Barcelona is going to take place, and they have been involved in some previous work, and one of them also will be implicated in the future of it. The first person that I introduce is Laia Grau. Laia, are you there? Well, Laia is an architect by the School of Architecture in Barcelona, and also has a master's degree in gender and equality. Has an experience as a urban planner architect, both in private and public sector. She has been working during a decade as an architect for the autonomic government of Catalonia in the Department of Territory and Sustainability. And since last October, she is Deputy Director of Urban Planning and Infrastructure of the Barcelona City Council. So we also have with us two architects that are involved in this research of the Barcelona City Council on city heritage, for the City Heritage Plan, is Gemma Serch. Gemma is an architect. I can see you there. Gemma is an architect by the School of Architecture, where she has her own practice called Matters, a highly specialized studio focused in interventions of restoration and refurbishment of listed buildings and historical interiors. And she is author of a comparative research based on international study cases of urban heritage protection systems commissioned by the Barcelona City Council. And our third guest is Alessandro Scarnato, who studied architecture in Florence and holds a PhD from the Polytechnic University of Barcelona, where he teaches history of city and architecture. He lives and works in Barcelona, where he has his own practice, mainly focused on interior, architectural, and urban refurbishment in historic context. Alessandro is the author of the book Barcelona Supermodel, a research on the 3 decades of urban transformation experienced in the old town of Barcelona. And this book won the City of Barcelona Award in 2016. So I pass the word to Alessandro. Alessandro, are you there? Perfect.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank you, Eva, for inviting me, and all the previous speakers for their amazing contributions. I have to say that I enjoyed all of them, and I found them very interesting, and I hope that also the public from home took good note of all the inputs that we've received. I would like to, I've had so many things, let's say, in my head while listening to this contribution. And I would make one, let's say, personal note, and then I will put 3 smaller reflections that might activate the debate. The personal note is that me, as an architect, I grew up in Florence, where I studied, which is a city that lives in the cult of the past, of the don't change anything, which doesn't mean that in Florence there is no construction activity and nothing has ever touched, but there for sure the mindset is that if something works, it is not that it has a second hand, it's the same hand over and over and over and over again. Therefore, there is no the problem of reuse, because it never stops to be used. Something, a building, a furniture, or an entire block of apartments. And when I arrived the first time in Barcelona, I was absolutely shocked, because I saw a cultural environment where whatever was not brand new was felt as something absolutely with no value, no interest at all. And the same shock that I was provoking in the locals when I was saying that my apartment in Florence was about 800-year old, and it was not one of the oldest in the city. Well, I had the same shock when somebody was telling me I live in a second-hand house, but not second-hand in the way we are understanding this expression here today, but second-hand, let's say, in the not so good meaning of something that has been used already, so has lost part of the value, because the only real valuable things are the brand new. So I have to say that in these recent years, things have been changing in Barcelona because of many aspects, among them also the constant interaction with this global world, so different points of view influence each other. Also, there is a new generation of architects, as the Italian architect Carlo Scarpa used to say, a new generation of architects stops at the age of 60, meaning that we're not talking of extremely young people, but definitely the new architects are more sensitive to this situation. This is a personal reflection on the fact that this consideration for the existing material has improved a lot, and therefore there is more room for debate and also practice in the sense that we are discussing here today. I would like to make three notes that hopefully will trigger some a part of discussion. The first is something that has been let's say, I found very interesting in the communication of Davide. Ciao, Davide. I have to say that there is something that in architecture is a relatively, historically speaking, very relatively new, and is the concept of originality. For many centuries, the architects have not felt this huge need to produce some flabbergasting architecture that leaves everybody absolutely shocked from its innovative image and originality. And in the past, they were all trying, Palladio, Leon Battista Alberti, trying to understand the essence of the classical architecture and to give new interpretations. And this is something that came to my mind when you showed the movies that have been reshot, let's say, from the same author or others, which is somehow the same kind of attitude of architects for a long part of history of architecture that I think recently has now become again accepted. I mean, you are no more forced to have some disruptive idea when you propose some project. The fact that the Mies van der Rohe award recently has been given to a rehabilitation, for instance, is a sign of that. You know? And I think, so this is the first note, that this concept of originality has done a lot of good things, but also has had several very bad side effects. And I think that it's very good that in this moment we are rethinking about this myth of originality at any cost, which I am convinced produced so many damages to our cities and also to our way of life, because finally architecture is something that everybody sooner or later has to interact, the equipments, the homes, the way the city is structured. The second observation, it's the second note, is about a risk, let's say. This reusing, and it's something that came to my mind above all listening to Lionel, which anyway I consider a fantastic experience, but the risk is maybe because I've been working a lot recently in the aspect of the gentrification, to study the gentrification, how to fix a space or a property or a city can turn it into something that finally is used by somebody else as a financial asset, you know. So it's just a personal thought, like in a brainstorming attitude. What can we do to avoid that this reuse of materials cannot turn into kind of cheap way to add the values for the market? Like I take something that is probably going to be thrown down, I dismantle it, I reuse these elements, and finally what I have is the possibility, I'm talking in terms of the big investors, no, to just add a value, but instead to buy the, let's say, to trigger a procedure involving some cut-edging designers, I do something that might have a kind of vintage atmosphere that we've seen can actually produce some side effects that we don't like a gentrification. So this is a possible element of discussion. I'm not saying that it's something that might happen, that will happen for sure, but I have this aspect that it deserves a bit of reflection. And finally, the last point that I would like to point out, it came to my mind above all when Curro said something about these guys that are involved in this process are not professionals. I think that the value of the professional preparation and the professional processes, it's something that we should be able to keep while we finally get again alive this consideration for the second-hand use. It's true that there are a lot of aspects in which we architects should be more, or designers in general should be more humble. And this is what I said before about the concept of originality. So the fact that we don't necessarily always have the right solution. Many times the interaction with a vast range of involved people can produce better solutions rather than the ones that we have only when we close in our studio. But it's something that anyway I think should also be considered. What can be the new dynamics that we can develop between established and certified professionals and all the other constellations of actors and stakeholders involved in this new situation of the second-hand mindset, let's say.
Who wants to answer by order? Davide on the concept of originality.
Yeah, on the concept of, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I completely agree with you. I don't trust in originality at any cost. And it's something that I always say to my students. I always say to them, as designer, interior designer or exhibition designer, because this is what I teach, that sometimes copying is the best form of originality that you can achieve. I mean, start copying, it's a good way to understand what to do. And then when you learn how to copy, you can learn how to do original things. So I always like to say that, okay, it's learning by doing, but also it's learning by redoing. Well, this is my position. I do think that it's possible to produce original things, and we have seen many of them today, many projects that are in a way original, but I started with something that is maybe it's already existing, and maybe without everything was produced without the idea of being original at any cost.
Yeah. Well, of course, the question of the gentrification is an important one, and I'm in a way glad you're asking it. Let's say it's first really important that we stress the fact that we are aware of being sometimes used as a kind of, let's say, real estate developers who are trying to use us as a Vaseline for facilitating a demolition. And that is something that we absolutely try to avoid being sucked into. So each time that we feel that there is a risk of some demolition that is being, let's say, motivated by the fact that in the end, Rotor will come by and they will salvage the best pieces, then we just walk away as soon as we can. So the projects we intervene on are usually projects where the decision to demolish has already been taken and is in a way unavoidable, and for many reasons that we always regret. Let's put it like that. So we completely subscribe to the idea that adaptive reuse is always better than anything else, and so first, you must try not to demolish anything. That's definitely something we would say. But we know that the world we live in is not functioning like that. And then you have to organize yourself to make sure that when a building is taken down, that you can also go and consider portions and fragments of a building like heritage. So it's mobile heritage, but it still is heritage. It's not because it's a fragment of a building. And I think there has been in heritage studies and in art history a kind of over-valuation of the integrity of an artistic creation. The building is a kind of a Frank Lloyd Wright like organic whole, and if you take a portion of it, it's valueless. I think that is a big problem with the heritage sector, at least in Belgium, as we know it. So we try to make them discover that an industrial product can also be a piece of heritage. It's another kind of heritage, and there's no huge big name of a designer or an architect connected to it, but there's lots of intelligence and effort and sweat and blood and tears that can be involved as well. But so that to say that definitely from a cultural and an environmental point of view, it's better to leave buildings as they are. And try to improve them, so that's definitely a thing. Now, about gentrification, I think it's very easy to throw that as a kind of reproach to designers and an architect, that they may enhance gentrification. But when I was a student of architecture, the example that we were given of absolute utter success in designing was the Guggenheim in Bilbao, like the building that transformed the whole economy of the city, or at least that's the way it was presented to us. And that is definitely something you must try and achieve. And I think there's no problem with the project being successful. The only thing is what is the context of success. So if you look at a development where so imagine any urban embellishment project that is profit-driven in the 19th century or the 20th century, whereby a lot of money is invested in one park or one building, so that you could get a lot of profit from selling the properties that are looking onto that park or looking onto that magnificent building. That can be problematic, but if you just design a beautiful piece of urban landscape that is available to the inhabitants, or you design a beautiful bar that is open to the neighborhood, I think it's the responsibility also of the let's say the urban administration to make sure that there is no that the profit made on the rents or the selling of housing units around that area are kept under control. And so it's I think you should not confuse the success of a project with let's say negative profit making that can be marginal to it. So because otherwise you're condemned to dismiss every successful architectural project, in the sense that it will attract people that will like it, and it might even attract rich people. I know this. I mean, it's a huge debate, so let's not get sucked into it completely. But I think it's important to make a division here. And then if we take the example of a bar and a designer who wants to make a successful bar, you might have two attitudes. You might say, okay, I will, as the bar owner, you might appoint a very prestigious architect who will use his design skills, will use lots of new materials and new forms, and it will be an extremely expensive project, but it might generate a successful bar. And you might take the same project of creating a bar, which is made only with using secondhand materials that have a lot of patina, character, soul into it, and that are making an equally successful interior space, then I will probably prefer the second option for its cultural richness, and also from an economic and environmental point of view. I think it's a better deal.
Great, thank you. Then there was the third question about the point of Alessandro, the non-professional. Maybe Curro, you.
Yeah. Okay. Just since I was taking this from the nuns, just to repeat this, they say most of the recipes we know have been created by non-professional chefs with an innovative spirit. I guess, yeah, I understand what you say, and I wouldn't miss maybe on one side we need skills, and actually in Aurels we have a carpenter, a professional carpenter that helps us with the technical skills. But saying that, I guess the nuns, they are suggesting this space to recognize everybody possibility to participate in the action of doing something, and to recognize this space and to stimulate it, because eventually we know that all this issue of heritage and secondhand, it should be the whole of the society. Everybody should be pushing somehow on there. So I think it's in a way, I completely agree. We have to find where is the professional and the rigor and the technical knowledge and expertise, but also where are the spontaneity and the other views that, because has not this knowledge, can put also other elements. So, and also, of course, we like to push ourselves a little bit, in the sense that, yeah, it's nice to criticize a little bit the designers and the architects.
Good. Thank you. And Miralda, I was thinking maybe you can add some comment about the originality. Is this a target?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't know what about being original. No, I think then, when you have a message to give, you just need to find the straight way to do it. So I don't know. Personally, I just things happen always after many digestion times. Many things never happen in one moment, because they got need always personally. I need to have a chance to sleep with some of the ideas or some of the thoughts or some. So I mean, when you means what you originality, you means about being original, or on an object that is original, or always a copy of a copy of a copy? What is your question? Perhaps I'm not answering exactly.
Yeah, I was talking about the, let's say, popular concept of originality, which doesn't mean authentic, but means something new, something never seen before. What I liked in the image I see of you is that on your back you have some texts written on the board. And when you were talking, I noticed that there is written mythologias, mythology, and ritual, which are linked to these conversations, the conversation we had, because any ritual is the reuse of something that has a value that makes worth to repeat certain procedures and with the same materials. And mythology is something that since the times of the analysis of Sigmund Freud, that goes in the same direction. I mean, is the re-elaboration of an idea in order to repropose it constantly. So I think that this understanding of the term, of the word originality, is also linked to these two words that I see written behind you.
Yes, completely. I mean, you know, if you want to read it better, but yes, I mean, yes. You know, I think this is there's a lot of connections and a lot of links about this subjects, and we could talk long time. But personally, you know, since the very long time, you know, I adore copies. You know, I have multiples. When I start to think that I was an artist, I start to do multiples. I use characters, and you can multiply with a machine. I mean, I like the idea that and those things finally become from a domestic or ritual, or from a situation, then connects people. But I mean, that's probably a straight connection to what you're saying about, you know, what ritual and or mythology works. But of course, I mean, you know, in what you're saying is probably more related about the importance of the object or of the ideas. I don't know exactly your idea, your question, what it goes through. So what's exactly the question?
Great, thank you. And Gemma, it would be nice to...
Okay, so I'll do the same thing as Alessandro, but through images. For me, it's easy to communicate with them. So I'll introduce 3 topics to the debate, and I'll launch 4 questions for you. And I'll start sharing my screen if I am capable. So I start with the first topic, and concerns attitude. Reuse has been the historical strategy for renewing, adapting, and regenerating cities until the disruption point that supposed the modern movement at the beginning of the 20th century with the industrialization of construction techniques and materials. Buildings and materials were reused and adapted to the new requirements and sensibilities. It was possible because most buildings were conceived to be flexible structures. Their materials had long-lasting performance, and there was a continuity of knowledge of construction techniques, skills, and craftsmanship. So the model was based on expertise and care of all agents involved. Attitude towards existing building was not unique. In fact, it moved from a worship one to a totally pragmatical approach, as we can see in the pictures. The first one on the left shows the remains of the columns of the Roman temple of Augustus inside a building that contains a lot of historical layers. The second one shows a Roman chapter as well, used as a raw material inside the wall, just as a piece of stone. So here comes my first question. How can we impulse contemporary attitudes toward what's already built, making them compatible in a conceptual and physical way? My second topic is, what about value? We've heard it before at the Lionel talk. The Rotor article in the IQD magazine, Mechanics of Rejuvenation, talks about value in 2 levels. value retention and value creation. The value retention can be considered as a cultural issue from my point of view, and regarding listening to the talk today, I think it's very clear. We can see in the first image the display in a temporary exhibition of a real fact that took place in 1957. During the renovation works in the Gaudí Casa Batlló that transformed the original house into an office building for an insurance company, a huge amount of doors and carpentries were literally dumped to the street. The former director of the Museums of Art of Catalonia, Joan Eno de las Artes, saw them as he drove by the Passeig de Gràcia, and he didn't stop until the city council took care of them. They finally entering the museum collection, so as valuable elements. I think it's hardly impossible that it could happen nowadays, part of a Gaudí work transformed into waste. But every day we can see a lot of construction elements dumped to the streets. I think Curro has made mention to the difficulties in the regulation to take profit of them. But these elements can be easily improved and reused, such as these carpentries. The value creation is related to a creative process and concerns us as architects, designers, historians, archaeologists, and artists to impulse it. So, next question. How can we take the maximum benefit from this potential and avoid losing value? And the third one, and it's my final one, it's about strategy, a long term, of course. Reuse in a broad way can be considered as a good strategy to obtain a holistic approach to history, memory, and materiality, not just maintaining an inventory of elements, but establishing a system. The City Council of Amsterdam has presented its circular strategy 2020-2050 a few weeks ago. The pandemic lockdown was already on. Amsterdam wants to be a completely circular city by 2050 with an intermediate target of a 50% reduction in primary raw materials consumption by 2030. It's a good initiative from the economical, environmental, and social points of view. So the municipal authority is taking the lead, recognizing that this challenge can only be achieved if everyone plays their part. We can see some cases of interesting reuse examples right now with huge impact in general media, even as the Sala Beckett, where this debate had to take place. I hope Eva doesn't mind that I'm using this picture, but it was important for me to connect with the real scenario of this talk. Are they merely an anecdote, or will it have significant social, ecological, and research impact? And finally, is it possible to settle some kind of collaborative networking between cities in order to share good practices and to fight administrative and legal obstacles? So that's all for me.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great. What are questions? Maybe we are lucky to have Laia also with us today. You had some time for us. So what do you think, Laia? You can choose. Which one of these questions would you like to answer?
First of all, thank you for the invitation, Eva and Marc Aureli. And I don't know who can I'm gonna make answer for the last question that Gemma made. Obviously, is our in the council, in the government of the city, in the city council, we are working. We are working for make. Well, first of all, I'm working with Marc Aureli in the city council, and Marc Aureli is in the part of the patrimonial aspects, and I'm in the urban planning part, and we try to make that the city promote the reconstruction than the new construction. Okay, so I was looking for this plan from Amsterdam, and it's a very, very good proposed, and we are expect to make some of these kind of politics. It's difficult sometimes to make that the things that we wanted, some of architects to make the decisions of the economical practice. And that's what happened when sometimes, and now in this position, in this time, in the post-COVID time, that we I'm asking. I want to ask, answer in a question that happened in Barcelona. Sometimes when we are talking with economics economical constructions, say constructions, okay, sector. Sometimes they always talk in a mantra way that the city is always finished, okay, and I hate this idea because the city is not finished. The city have a lot of practice to do because the city have to change, have to make a lot of changes for the users that we need, and it's a thing that it's only a reading of the economic market. But it's a mantra that there are no spaces to build, there are no way for the construction, because anybody of this sector of the economy think that the construction is a way to economy. So I want to change it, and I want to promote in the master plans that we promote to put this change, this conception that we have to promote the rehabilitation against the new construction. And I want to ask, because there are a lot of, all of us said, what are the best things, the reconstruction from the new construction, no? Because it's more respectful for the environment, for the local economy, and for the memory. And I want to ask for the Rotor team, what do you think about it's going to happen after this COVID situation? That the main issue is going to be the direction of the economy and the industry, and how we are going to convince that the way of the construction is not the new builds. Do you think that the industrialization of the rebuilding perhaps is the way? And is it possible?
So if I understand it well, the question is whether we can uncouple reconstruction as it's traditionally seen since 1945 from the economy. So that there could be a building economy that would be supportive of the general economy, that would be, let's say, unhinged from demolition, reconstruction, redevelopment, that kind of attitude, and that would be depending on the rehabilitation of existing buildings.
Yes, and if I understood, Laia concern also was this with this situation of COVID. If maybe afterwards there will be like a claim in favor of industry, that rehabilitation will be forgotten or given like a second importance. And if I understood, Laia, are you there?
Yeah. Well, but I think big industrial or the big economic sectors that are well organized, such as the building industry, they will do everything to use their powers to influence policy. So it's obviously a powerful lobby, and it's true that there might be reasons to be pessimistic for that. And I think we have to throw resistance against it, just like we have to resist airline being heavily subsidized to take their activity up again. So we know that there is something profoundly destructive about that type of building. So I think we have to limit the damage, and it's going to be really important to make the building industry understand that they are not necessarily dependent upon the cubic meter of concrete they're pouring annually to function. And so I think it's going to be a gradual effort, but I think that the COVID crisis could be a great opportunity as well to seize, because we will probably see a period in which the big investments are going to go down in big building investments, where let's say the field is going to reshuffle in a way. It might be a good opportunity to try and push a series of positive evolutions that we see in a good direction. But I think municipalities play an extremely important role there as regulators of what's going to happen in the city.
Yes, because at the same time with your presentation, between you and Curro, it opens this field. We could see how much the work of people is much more relevant in the different activities that you are taking place, and if this is what we will need, probably direct salaries to people.
Absolutely, we tend to say that a deconstruction employs 7 times as many people as a traditional demolition, and people will say, okay, that's a disadvantage, but we say it's an asset, especially when you need employment, but then you have to facilitate it otherwise. So encourage the industry to go for it. But the good thing about it is it creates local employment. So this is employment that is impossible to send to overseas countries. It needs to happen in your cities. It can't happen anywhere else. So it would be a reason to be optimistic, but you have to be vigilant.
Okay, who want to join? Alessandro? Have something to say? I know you had to leave. I think we have some questions from the audience. We have a question from Jelena, and it's about this. I would like to point out the social aspect of secondhand. So can we think about the transfer of memories when we embark in projects of rescue and renewal of spaces and materials? Who wants to answer this?
Maybe I can try and give a short answer, but I if nobody wants to, but I spoke already a lot, so maybe Curro.
Curro.
Thank you. Well, maybe I can link a little bit this comment, this question with the previous one about the values and the attitude. And I feel one of the challenge we have is to recognize and to see all these elements from a different perspective. And at that point, it's to simplify probably too much, but it's one of these terms that sometimes appears, the upcycling, when a little transformation, it's able not just to make the valuable without losing, but to make the valuable even higher, so from something, whatever it is, to make a push and to put it higher. Even if and I think to me, you can look at in terms of materiality, function, or aesthetics, but also, as she was saying, the memory thing. And to do this transformation, to me, I think the 3 presentations has shown different strategies of upcycling, in the sense that all of them are taking things and pushing them to another state, adding something, or maybe the vocabulary is not great, but without afraid of this is maybe it's a negotiation, a dialogue. This memory, we know we need memory, it's important, but at the same time, we know the dangers of memory, or the fact that cannot allow us to do certain movements. So I think from the 3 presentations, I like they were not afraid of too much of the memories. It was a memory somehow evident, and all of them to me, they put it on light, but at the same time, they transform and they make a step farther to some other direction.
Good. Thank you, Curro. And Alessandro, would you like to add something? I know you.
First of all, I'm sorry that I have to leave. And therefore, I say bye to everybody now, and I thank everybody of the participants, first of all, from the organization that invited me. I just want to add as a closing contribution on my side that I consider, as Laia mentioned and also Lionel made in its intervention, that the municipalities they absolutely can have a lot of things to say and a big role in handling this new scenario that we've described today. The possibilities are huge, are vast. As everything new, there is also space, cracks where some undesired side effect can enter. And I think that the municipality regulations that normally are very effective in construction should be the let's say the main tool in order to get the best from these new possibilities that the second-hand attitude opens in our cities. So thanks again. And I am so interested in this topic and enthusiastic from this invitation. I think I will see it again on YouTube because I think it will be online for a while.
Thank you very much, Alessandro.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Having you. Bye. Great. So we would just, I would like, Gemma, would you like to add something else?
No, I just, I don't know who showed the image. I don't know if it was Curro, it was Lionel, about a lot of furniture dumped in the streets, like making a huge mountain. Maybe it was Curro.
It was Curro, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this thing about not losing value or make a push to win value in every step. And it shocked me, the image, because what we are doing right now is from a thing that has a certain quality, material quality, we are reducing its value. So I think we have to change completely our point of view and our perspective about how to reduce materials, not losing in such a, I don't know how to say it or how qualify it, insanity way. We have to lose everything. I don't know. I think it's so totally nonsense.
Yeah, thank you. I know Lionel has to go. So Lionel, would you like to answer Gemma?
Well, it's okay. I thought it was urgent, but I have a bit more time than that, so I can stay a bit longer. Yeah, well, I totally agree with the let's say the value destruction that you're referring to, and for me it's there has been something as an organized value destruction of things, and for me the recycling industry is much of that. And with Rotor, we've always been pretty skeptical about the notion of recycling because we saw how it happened here. You have to, well, realize that in many cases, and it's probably not the case for the recycling of metals, for instance, but for many other materials, recycling is always downcycling. It's extremely rare that you get a high-grade material that can be reinjected in a production process that is coming from recycling. So when you recycle plastics, you need to be sure that you only have polypropylene and that you don't have any polystyrene mixed to it or no pure. So it's virtually impossible to make it so pure that you can reintroduce it in a production process. So we've been studying industrial production processes in our beginning years, and we realized that I mean, if you the production of plastic bottles, for instance, if you try to use recycled PET to produce plastic bottles, you have a risk of explosion at every minute in your production machine. So it's a blow molding machine, and if you have one impurity in your molten plastic that enters the blow molding machine, then it stops, and the whole production is arrested for at least 1 hour, the time that they take the rubbish out of it, etc. So they just don't do it. It's too much complicated. So I'm highly skeptical of many recycling processes, but I think we have to push for them. But certainly for the mineral waste, the way it's happening now for the moment, it's just a way of, it's not a way of switching products. It's a way of being able to tear down other buildings and to replace them with new ones. So it's something that has to be rethought seriously, but it's going to take a lot of efforts because the sector is so well established now, certainly in a country like ours.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think it's almost time. I asked the four guests that talk at the beginning to think of a question that you will pose to the other three. If one of you, the question has not been talking yet, maybe Miralda, you have thought of, had some question prepared?
Yeah, I was thinking more, David, I mean, the archive concept of David, how, I mean, it's you too, I mean, Lionel, you too, I mean, you work in, you're doing a large archive, you're keeping all those materials and after removing those. And so, I don't know, this idea of archive, I don't know how, how you deal with, but especially the question was for David because I guess he has more kilometers of film kept in his own files. I would be curious to know what you think about, I mean, how you do with that, how you deal with.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I see the whole thing as a puzzle. When you play a puzzle, you buy a box full of pieces and you already know the image because the image is on the top of the box. Mm-hmm. From my point of view, and I think that this is something related also with your work, but maybe with the work of Curro and Lionel, the image is not on the box and the pieces are everywhere. You only have to find them and try to recombine them in the picture that you want to put on your box at the end of the process. So for this reason, when I say that I like to watch a huge amount of movies every day and collect clips without thinking about a possible project to be done, is because something is revealed only by the way that you are looking at something. You find something interesting, and then you find another piece, you put them all together, and just the juxtaposition of the two elements produce meaning. And I think that this is related with art in a general way, but I think this could be part of the process from the architectural way of designing, of looking at things. I think when I saw the two images that Gemma showed before about the attitude and the value, the doors and the other the elements, the columns, they were pieces of a puzzle. And for me, there are many different ways to combine them, and maybe to combine them in a good way.
And Davide, did you have a question? What was your question addressed to?
Well, not actually. Well, I had a question for at the beginning for Miralda because when I read the text on the magazine, I was very interested in the process. The text was describing him spending a night inside the restaurant and progressively discovering the different things, wall behind another wall, then behind another wall. I only would like Miralda to say something about this more, because I mean, my own way to find out things is to watch movies, something very safe, because I'm in my office or at home, and I only have to watch a movie and use a software that can. But in that situation, you had to use your body, your hands. So it wasn't safe at all. It was something that can hurt. So if you can explain a little bit, about it.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. I love to watch films too, but I need to, I really need to get more involved sometimes. I think it's a question of time, a lot of time. Time means, sometimes you scratch papers, a lot of scratching papers and making whatever sketches, or you call it drawings or whatever. But most of the time it's part of the experience, and the experience to feeling the things, and at the very end is like a palimpsest. The things are just one behind the other one, and you. But of course, you need to make a hole, or you need to unwrap a carpet, or you need to, you need some action. But more is I would say more a concept idea of really see how what else, what I feel, but what this brings to the other thing, this extension, this continuation, like the cadaver exquisite, this idea of falling things, and everything regenerates, and everything, it's a little bit what we've been talking today. Things have this kind of life and energy. But yes, I would say this is a lot of about consuming time. Time means probably, I don't know, pills or coffee or brain, or I don't know. It's like answer enough for you that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I would like to ask Curro, what was your question for whom?
Yeah, actually, wow, this is a difficult, because I have questions for everybody. But if I have to choose one that maybe it's more far away from what it's been in discussion, perhaps to Lionel, I will ask a kind of a bit marketing question, in the sense that the clients you have, how far do you feel they valorate the pure environmental action of what it means to take a decision and to use one of your elements? How far do you feel in their decisions this component is taken in consideration? That because are dealing with the stuff that you are working with, there is consequences on the environmental in relation to a pure new element that they incorporate in the building.
Thank you, Curro, for your question. It's difficult to say. It's impossible to give one answer to cover all situations, but I might give an answer talking about a project that I showed of the social housing company. So that is definitely a commissioner. So let's say the two directors that came to us and invited us to do the design, they were driven by the traditional company values, let's say, which are upholding sustainability very much. And so they were absolutely convinced. They were total diehards, and they were completely on board for let's say the project that we put on the table. Now that was maybe less the case for the employees of the company, and which are not necessarily they haven't signed a contract saying that they would adhere to all the sustainability issues. And of course, the functionality of the design was far more important for them. Feeling safe in their workplace, which is especially when you have to deal with the customers, is not always easy. And then there is that question of feeling well taken care of. As an employee, you want your environment to be like a gift. And I realize that is often a challenge with sustainable design or reuse design, in the sense that sometimes people will understand something that is explicitly secondhand as, let's say, condescending, if you see what I mean. So it's as if, as an employee, you're not worth a new office table, or a new desk, a new computer, a new chair. And you have to be extremely sensitive with that issue. And I think that's the social dimension of reuse as well, as it came up in the discussion. And I'm glad to talk about it with you, because it's obviously something you are dealing with as well. But it's as if you're as in a karate move, you're turning that challenge into an asset. I have the impression in your own work, in the sense that your customers are often participating in the production of the pieces, or that's the way I understand it. And I think in your work, I see a lot of, let's say, almost revolutionary potential, in the sense that there's really that emancipatory dimension, that you're making something that, as you say, it's brutalist, it's rough, and it's disruptive of traditional design. It really has that quality in it. And we love to make pieces like that sometimes as well, but we know that in other circumstances, like the one I described, we just cannot afford it, because people would take it aggressive. I mean, as an act of aggression. But I think the social dimension of how people are reading these objects is a heavily underestimated dimension of the topic of reuse.
Great. So did you have a question for Curro prepared?
Yes. Well, my question was a very simple one. I was wondering, do you know the book Ad Hocism by Charles Jenks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you agree with his description of what ad hocism is, and would you feel like belonging to that category in your work, or not exactly?
Actually, I really, the way you was commenting just now, how you perceive the pieces we are doing, somehow it made me feel that now connecting with Adhocism, how is an attitude, it mixes an intention of, you mentioned this word, disruptive, and it's a mixing of to be deliberately uncomfortable, in the sense that, it's sometimes maybe it's on the limit, and the perception of that piece maybe not apparently as friendly. I guess the Frankenstein reference, or of course all the, in a way, Adhocism and all the work from the communities that they are forced to live in really extreme conditions. And it seems like at certain point they are not caring of certain aesthetic elements in the way supposedly someone in society does, in the sense that there is a urgency to solve something. So it seems like certain aspects of elements, of the appearance of elements, they're less urgent. But at the same time, if you ever have got a chance to go, like, to visit a favela, for instance, in Brazil, and there is a proud of being able to build your own house, and even if the elements doesn't fix as good as like design magazines, but there is a strong connection to be able to do something. And I guess it's yeah, to me, there is a lot of uncertainties on there, and I'm not sure. And if sometimes this is a barrier, this is a wall to be accepted. These elements for many parts of the society, or they see as a bit extreme or out of the certain normality. But yeah, I guess it's the eventually the curiosity that moves you to explore that. Without, for sure, I don't have. I have a lot of. I don't know. I mean, there is still a lot of elements that questions to me, and I'm not sure the path to do it. But the capacity of maybe also this term amateur, you know, the one that does something because it loves to do it, and even if technically it's limited, but it compensates on other aspects, and that rafty thing that kind of a more or less apparently less less orthodox way of doing things. It's in itself is a way of questioning also the reality we have, and this supposed to normality that we have to go to.
Mm-hmm. That
Great.
makes sense.
Good. Well, thank you all. I think I could stay longer listening to all your comments. That's great. I'm very pleased. We have to close down. I think I lit the poster I had behind. It has been really a pleasure listening to you. I think it is, and I'm very happy also that you have presented your project, very creative, very attractive ways of dealing with these second-hand pieces. And on the other side, we have 4 of you, and then 4 architects that are related to this new revision of the Heritage Plan of Barcelona. So I think we'll collect all this information, and all this debate will be collected in an active way. So, and I would like to thank you, all of you, the people who were listening, say again, hello, goodbye. And thanks also to Marc Aureli to organize this session, to have this idea of putting this kind of a fragment of this magazine into this online format. And Marc Aureli, if you want to say something, to say goodbye to everyone.
Okay, Eva, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to everybody. One information, I was talking with the organization in the public vision of this journey. In the beginning, it was a problem. We are going to make some kind of edition of all of the process. It's going to be able to look for everybody. I have enjoyed very much about all of you, really. I knew because of my conversation with Eva and with the thing I was reading. It's very nice. I know Miralda for some years ago, and the project you has been explaining is very fantastic. And this idea of to play with the objects and to have a new life to the objects is very interesting. It's very interesting also the conference of Davide and this idea of to play also to enjoy with the copies and to make new things with the copies is very interesting. Well, very interesting about Lionel, because you don't know what in Barcelona we have a lot of interest on this kind of project, because we are worried about a lot of material we have. And we have and even we are collecting, we have to reuse. It's very interesting, and also with very many thanks to Curro Claret. I know your project for some years ago. I have been talking about this because of this vinculation with the social way of do the things is very nice. Well, thank you very much. I think we are going to we have a lot of job, as I said in the beginning, and but I think this second-hand way of thinking is very useful and very. I think it's, and nobody can forget that in this time is I think is obligatory to reuse that, to think about how Curro said, follow with something who came and we use and we leave to the next generation, more or less. I think and in a moment you were talking about this, it was very interesting. Well, nothing else, because I suppose it's very late now and everybody is very tired. And thank you also, Laia, for the because I know she is very worried about all of the things we have to do now. We have a lot of job, but it's very nice to work with her, and in this I think it's going to be interesting to do our future. Okay, thank you very much to everybody. And Eva, you close the, okay?
Yes, I think that you close it. Thank you again. I really enjoy it. Thank you for the great presentation and for everyone to be here to participate. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Eva. Bye, Aureli.
Everybody.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, Gemma.
Thank you.